The security camera caught it at 11:58 p.m. A man in a $3,000 suit pressing his palm against the glass door of a cafe that had already gone dark, mouthing two words that would unravel everything. One last coffee? Nina Park's world smelled like burnt espresso and possibility. At 11:47 p.m., she was wiping down the counter of Crescent Cafe, a narrow storefront wedged between a laundromat and a shuttered bookstore on Madison Avenue. The overhead lights buzzed softly. Her reflection in the coffee machine looked tired, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, an apron stained with foam art gone wrong. She'd opened Crescent 3 years ago with money scraped from waitressing jobs and a small loan her mother had co-signed. The cafe wasn't much. 12 seats, mismatched chairs, walls covered in local art that never sold. But it was hers. Every night she closed alone, counting tips that barely covered rent, wondering if passion was supposed to feel this exhausting. Outside, the September rain had started, light but persistent, turning the sidewalk into a mirror of streetlights. Nina flipped the sign to closed and reached for the lock. That's when the knocking started, sharp, insistent. A silhouette stood beyond the fogged glass, one hand raised, the other holding what looked like a leather briefcase. She hesitated. Late-night knockers were usually drunk or lost. But something about the posture, straight-backed, almost apologetic, made her pause. She cracked the door open 2 inches. "We're closed," she said. The man stepped into the light. Tailored charcoal suit. Dark hair swept back, touched with gray at the temples. Eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. "I know," he said quietly. His voice had gravel in it, the kind that comes from too many boardroom arguments. "But I saw your lights. I was hoping." He stopped as if the request embarrassed him. "One last coffee?" Nina should have said no, should have pointed to the sign, to the clock, to common sense. Instead, she found herself stepping back, opening the door wider. "1 cup," she said. "Then I'm locking up." He nodded, relief washing over his features. "Thank you." As he stepped inside, water dripping from his expensive shoes onto her cheap linoleum, Nina had no idea she'd just let Victor Hale, CEO of Hale Industries featured in Forbes' Billionaire list, the man whose face appeared on business magazines but never gossip pages, into more than just her cafe. If you've ever made a decision that changed everything, hit subscribe because this story is just beginning. Nina locked the door behind him and gestured toward the counter. "What can I get you?" Victor scanned the handwritten menu board. His gaze lingered on the drinks, then dropped to the pastry case, empty except for one lonely blueberry muffin. "What do you recommend?" he asked. She almost laughed. Billionaires didn't usually ask baristas for recommendations. "Depends. You want to stay awake or actually sleep tonight?" "Sleep would be ambitious," he said, the corner of his mouth twitching. Not quite a smile, but close. "Decaf cappuccino, then. Extra foam." She moved behind the machine, muscle memory taking over. The espresso grinder hummed. Steam hissed. Victor settled onto a stool, setting his briefcase carefully on the floor. "Long day?" Nina asked, pouring milk into the pitcher. "Long year," he corrected. He loosened his tie. Navy silk. Probably cost more than her monthly utilities. "I had a meeting that ended at 11. Walked past here and saw your lights. Felt like fate." Nina suppressed a snort. Fate. Rich people loved that word, as if coincidence needed poetry. She finished the cappuccino, attempting a heart in the foam. It came out lopsided, closer to a kidney. She slid it across the counter. "That'll be $4.50. Victor pulled out his wallet, real leather, monogrammed, and extracted a $50 bill. "Keep it. I can't, for staying open." His tone left no room for argument. "I needed this more than you know." Nina took the bill, uncomfortable with the weight of it. She made change anyway, placing $45 on the counter. Victor ignored it, lifting the cup to his lips. He took a sip. His shoulders, which had been up near his ears, dropped slightly. "Good?" she asked. "Perfect." They sat in silence. Rain tapped against the windows. Victor drank slowly, deliberately, like a man trying to stretch 60 seconds into 60 minutes. Nina wiped down the espresso machine, hyper-aware of his presence. The way he held the cup with both hands, the way he stared at the foam as if it held answers. Finally, he set the empty cup down. "Same time tomorrow?" Nina blinked. "What?" "I'd like to make this a regular thing. If you're open. We close at 11, I know." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I'm asking if you'd stay open. Just for a few minutes. Just for me. I'll pay whatever you think is fair. It was absurd. Reckless. Nina's mother would have called it stupid, but something in his expression, vulnerable beneath the expensive tailoring, made her nod before logic could intervene. Midnight, she heard herself say. 1 cup. That's it. Victor extended his hand. Victor, she shook it. His grip was warm, steady. Nina. Thank you, Nina. He picked up his briefcase and walked to the door. She unlocked it and he stepped back into the rain. Before disappearing around the corner, he turned. See you tomorrow. The door closed. Nina stood there, $45 in her hand, wondering what she'd just agreed to. On the counter, Victor's cup still held a trace of foam. Her failed heart collapsed into abstract lines. She picked it up to wash it. That's when she noticed. Underneath the saucer, pressed flat, was a business card. Victor Hale, CEO, Hale Industries, Manhattan. London, Singapore. Nina's stomach dropped. She Googled the name on her phone. Images loaded. Victor at charity galas. Victor shaking hands with mayors. Victor's company acquiring competitors like chess pieces. Net worth $2.3 billion. The article described him as ruthlessly private and notoriously focused. The man who'd just sat in her cafe, desperate for coffee at midnight, was one of the most powerful people in the city. Nina looked at the locked door, at the rain still falling, at the business card in her hand. What had she gotten herself into? Victor returned the next night at 11:59 p.m., and the night after that, and the one after that. By the end of week 1, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Nina would finish closing, leave the door unlocked, and wait. Victor would arrive exactly at midnight, never early, never late, and order the same thing. Decaf cappuccino, extra foam. He'd sit at the same stool, briefcase at his feet, and drink in silence while Nina cleaned. On night 4, he asked if she needed help. With what? Nina said, scrubbing the milk steamer. Cleaning. You're here an extra 30 minutes because of me. Seems fair, I contribute, she laughed. You want to wash dishes? Why not? Because you're... She stopped herself. Rich? Victor finished. Rich people don't get dirty? I didn't say that. He stood, removed his suit jacket, and rolled up his sleeves. Where's the soap? Nina pointed to the sink, half convinced he'd give up after 1 plate. Instead, Victor scrubbed every cup, every saucer, every spoon with the focus of someone who'd learned precision young. His movements were efficient, practiced. No complaining. No jokes about manual labor. When he finished, he dried his hands on a towel and met her eyes. Better? You didn't have to, Nina said quietly. I wanted to. Something shifted that night. The space between them, the distance of class, money, expectation, narrowed by a few inches. On night 7, Victor arrived carrying a small bag. He set it on the counter. What's this? Nina asked. A trade. He pulled out an apron, pale blue with a cartoon cat wearing a chef's hat. You let me stay. I help close, deal? Nina stared at the apron. It was ridiculous, adorable, completely wrong for a man who brokered billion-dollar deals. You're serious. I don't joke about aprons. She took it, grinning despite herself. Deal. From that night forward, the routine solidified. 11:01 p.m. Nina closed to customers. 11:45 p.m. Final cleanup began. 12:00 a.m. Victor arrived. 12:01 a.m. Nina made his cappuccino. 12:05 a.m. Victor put on the cat apron and washed dishes while Nina wiped tables. 12:20 a.m. They sat together, Victor drinking, Nina nursing chamomile tea. 12:30 a.m. Victor left. Nina locked up. The unspoken rules became clear. No personal questions during cleanup. No phones at the counter. Payment was $50 left under the saucer, which Nina stopped refusing after Victor made it clear he'd just leave hundreds if she kept arguing. If Nina needed to talk, Victor listened. If he needed silence, she provided it. It was an arrangement. Clinical, almost contractual. Yet every night when Victor put on that cat apron, silk tie loosened, $5,000 shoes swapped for comfort, dark circles under his eyes fading slightly, Nina saw someone she recognized. Someone tired of performing. Someone who'd found a sliver of space where expectations didn't follow. She didn't ask why he came. He didn't explain why he stayed. But on night 10, as Victor reached for a particularly stubborn coffee stain on a mug, Nina caught herself staring at his hands, strong, capable, decorated with a single ring on his right hand. She wondered what it meant. Wondered if anyone else knew this version of him. The man who scrubbed dishes with concentration, who smiled softly when Nina's foam art failed. It always failed. Who thanked her every night like she'd given him something precious. He looked up, caught her watching. "What?" "Nothing," Nina said quickly. You're getting better at the mugs." Victor examined his work, then shrugged. "Good teacher." It wasn't until after he left that night, door locked, $50 tucked into the register, cat apron hanging on its hook, that Nina realized something dangerous. She'd started looking forward to midnight not for the money. Not for the company exactly, for him. The photograph appeared on a Saturday morning, and it changed everything. Nina woke to 17 missed calls from her best friend, Jenna, and a text that simply read, "Check Instagram." She opened the app, still groggy, and saw her cafe tagged in a post from A City Night Owl, a popular Manhattan account with 400,000 followers. The image was grainy, shot through Crescent Cafe's front window, but unmistakable. Victor Hale, in a cat apron, washing dishes, a slight smile on his face. The caption, "Spotted. Billionaire CEO Victor Hale doing dishes at a tiny cafe past midnight." Plot twist of the year or undercover boss situation? Victor Hale, billionaire spotted, Manhattan mystery. The post had 89,000 likes. The comment section was chaos. Is this real or Photoshop? Victor Hale doesn't even make his own coffee, fake. I need the story behind this. That apron, though. Who's the girl? His girlfriend. Nina's phone rang again. "Jenna, have you seen this?" Jenna practically screamed. "I'm looking at it now." "Nina, that's Victor Hale, the Victor Hale. What is happening?" We're not, he just comes in for coffee. At midnight. In a cat apron. While doing your dishes. It's complicated, I'll say. The internet thinks you're dating." Nina's stomach dropped. She scrolled further. More accounts had picked up the story. Business blogs. Gossip sites. Even a local news page. Manhattan's most eligible bachelor caught in surprising late-night routine. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Victor. Saw the post. "Are you okay?" Nina, define okay. Victor, fair. I'm sorry. This is my fault. Nina, did you know someone was watching? Victor, no, but I should have been more careful. Nina sat on her bed processing. In 3 weeks, their midnight routine had become her favorite part of the day. Quiet, private, separate from the noise of everything else. Now the world was watching, speculating, turning their arrangement into gossip. Nina, what do we do? Victor, that depends. Do you want me to stop coming? Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Logic said yes. Stop before it gets worse. Before people start showing up taking pictures, asking questions. Before the cafe becomes a tourist trap instead of a refuge. But when she imagined midnight without Victor, without the sound of running water, the sight of him in that ridiculous apron, the comfortable silence they'd built, something in her chest tightened. Nina. No. Victor. Then we handle it. Together. Trust me. Nina. I don't really know you well enough to trust you. Victor. Fair again. Let me earn it. Meet me at the cafe tonight, 11 p.m. before midnight. I'll explain everything. Nina agreed, anxiety coiling in her stomach. She spent the day fielding questions from regular customers who'd seen the post, deflecting with vague answers. Jenna stopped by at lunch demanding details Nina didn't know how to give. He's just a customer, Nina insisted. Nina, billionaires don't do dishes for just customers. Maybe he's weird, or maybe he likes you. Nina shook her head. He's lonely. That's all. I'm convenient. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. At 11 p.m. sharp, the cafe door opened. Victor stepped inside, not in his usual suit but in dark jeans and a gray sweater. Casual, almost normal. He carried a folder under one arm. Hi, he said. Hi. They stood awkwardly. For 3 weeks they'd existed in the bubble of post-midnight hours. Seeing him before closing felt like breaking a spell. I owe you an explanation, Victor said, settling onto his usual stool. About who I am, why I'm here, and what happens next. Nina locked the door, flipped the sign, and turned to face him. I'm listening. Victor opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers, articles, photos, timelines. 6 months ago, my ex-wife and I finalized our divorce. It was messy, public. She gave interviews, sold stories, accused me of being emotionally unavailable, which was fair. I was. He paused, fingers tapping the counter. My company went through a major acquisition. I fired 2 executives for embezzlement. Testified in court. Every outlet covered it. Every move I made was dissected. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped being human. Nina listened, pieces clicking into place. My assistant suggested therapy. I tried it. Didn't help. Then one night, after another 18-hour day, I walked past your cafe, saw the lights. Something about it felt safe, small, anonymous. He met her eyes. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You just made coffee and let me sit. For the first time in months, I felt like a person instead of a headline. Nina's throat tightened. So that's all this is? Escapism? No, Victor's voice was firm. It started that way. But it became something else. He stopped, choosing words carefully. You see me. Not my net worth. Not my reputation, just me. The guy who can't make foam art. Who washes dishes badly. Who shows up because the world makes sense here in a way it doesn't anywhere else. Victor. The photo changes things, he continued. People are going to come, journalists, influencers, curiosity seekers, your cafe will be flooded. I can fix that, hire security, make statements, shut it down. Or, he pushed the folder toward her. Inside was a contract. Consultation agreement. Duration 6 months. Compensation $10,000 a month. You hire me, Victor said. Officially. As a consultant. I help improve your business, operations, marketing, expansion. In exchange, I get to keep coming at midnight. It becomes legitimate, professional. The gossip dies down because there's a real reason I'm here. Nina stared at the contract. $10,000 a month was more than she made in profit. It would save the cafe, pay off her loan, maybe even let her hire part-time help, but it would also blur every line they'd carefully drawn. You don't have to decide now, Victor said quietly. But Nina, I'm not letting one photo destroy what we built. I'm not walking away unless you tell me to. She looked at him. This man who'd knelt in her cafe every night for 3 weeks, scrubbing her dishes, listening to her stories about difficult customers and failed latte art. The man who'd never once made her feel small, despite having the power to buy her building on a whim. Okay, she said, okay? I'll sign. But no special treatment. You show up, you work, deal? Victor smiled, a real one this time, reaching his eyes. Deal, they shook hands. This time, Nina held on a second longer, feeling the warmth of his palm, the calluses she hadn't noticed before. Outside, a camera flash went off. Someone had followed him. Victor saw it too. His jaw tightened. Then he turned back to Nina, voice dropping. Front door or back? What? They want a story? Let's give them a boring one. Before Nina could respond, Victor grabbed a broom leaning against the wall and started sweeping, methodically, publicly. Through the window, the photographer could see everything. A billionaire CEO doing grunt work, Nina wiping tables, both of them moving with the rhythm of people who'd done this 100 times. After 10 minutes, the photographer gave up and left. Nina laughed, tension breaking. You're ridiculous. Effective, though. Fair. That night, when midnight came and Victor put on his cat apron, nothing felt different. Except now they both knew the world was watching, and they were choosing to stay anyway. The consultation agreement went public 3 days later. Victor's PR team released a statement. Hale Industries CEO Victor Hale Partners, with local entrepreneur Nina Park to explore small business optimization, models. Boring. Corporate. Exactly what they needed. The internet lost interest within 48 hours. A celebrity breakup stole the spotlight and Crescent Cafe returned to its quiet existence. Mostly. Revenue tripled. Not because of Victor's consulting, which, to Nina's surprise, was actually useful. He'd restructured her supply orders, saving her 12% monthly. But because curious customers kept coming, hoping to catch another glimpse of the billionaire in the cat apron. This is exhausting, Nina said one night, collapsing onto a stool after serving 73 cappuccinos in 6 hours. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. She'd run out of oat milk twice. Victor, washing the mountain of dishes, glanced over. Want me to hire staff? No, Nina, I said no. She softened her tone. If I hire people, this stops being mine. It becomes corporate. I didn't open Crescent to manage employees. I opened it to make coffee. Victor nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. Autonomy matters. Exactly. He dried his hands and sat beside her. They'd been doing this for 6 weeks now. The midnight routine plus official consulting sessions twice a week, where Victor actually reviewed her books, suggested menu changes, and taught her negotiation tactics for vendor contracts. It was working. The cafe was stable for the first time since opening, but something else was growing too. The way Victor's hand would brush hers when passing a dish, the way Nina caught herself watching him work, memorizing the concentration on his face, the way silence between them had become comfortable, full instead of empty. I have an event Friday, Victor said suddenly. Charity gala. Hale Industries hosts it annually, raises money for literacy programs. 500 people, boring speeches, overpriced wine. Sounds awful. It is. He turned to face her fully. Come with me, Nina blinked. What? As my date, officially. The contract gives us cover. Your consulting, networking makes sense. But honestly, he met her eyes. I'd like you there. These events are suffocating. You make them bearable. Victor, I can't afford a gown. And I don't know I'll handle the dress. A stylist will come to you. No pressure, just think about it. Nina's first instinct was to refuse. Galas weren't her world. She'd be surrounded by people who summered in the Hamptons, who measured success in commas, who'd see through her immediately. But the way Victor asked, quietly hopeful, almost vulnerable, made her hesitate. Okay, she said. But if I embarrass you, you won't. Friday arrived too quickly. The stylist, a woman named Margot with severe bangs and impeccable taste, brought 6 dresses to Nina's apartment. They settled on midnight blue silk, simple and elegant, with a neckline that didn't make Nina feel like she was pretending to be someone else. Victor picked her up at 7 in a town car. He wore a tuxedo that fit like it had been grown on him, hair perfectly styled, the version of himself the world expected. But when Nina stepped out of her building, his expression shifted, something raw crossing his face before the mask returned. You look beautiful, he said quietly. You clean up okay too. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, grand ballroom dripping with chandeliers and champagne flutes. Nina's heels clicked on marble floors as Victor guided her inside, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. Eyes turned. Whispers started. She recognized the weight of scrutiny immediately. Breathe, Victor murmured near her ear. You belong here as much as anyone. They moved through the crowd. Victor introduced her to a parade of faces, investors, board members, society fixtures whose names Nina instantly forgot. She shook hands, smiled, and tried not to feel like an imposter in borrowed silk. Then they reached the bar, and everything shifted. A woman in crimson, stunning, poised, dripping in diamonds, appeared at Victor's elbow. Victor, darling, I heard you were bringing a date. How unexpected. Victor's jaw tightened. Clarissa. The ex-wife. Nina recognized her from the articles Victor had shown her. The woman who'd turned their divorce into a media circus. And you must be the barista, Clarissa said, turning to Nina with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. How quaint. Victor always did have a savior complex. Nina felt her face flush, but before she could respond, Victor stepped between them. Nina is my consultant, he said, voice ice cold. And my guest. Treat her with respect or leave. Clarissa laughed, sharp and brittle, still so serious. Tell me, Nina, has he told you about the prenup? About how he valued his company over his marriage? About how he missed our anniversary because a board meeting ran late? That's enough, Victor said, is it? Because I think she should know what she's getting into. Victor Hale doesn't do relationships. He does transactions. You're just the latest. Stop. Nina's voice cut through the tension. She stepped forward, meeting Clarissa's gaze directly. I don't know what happened between you two. I don't need to. But I know the man who shows up at my cafe every night, who washes dishes without complaining, who listens when I talk about inventory stress and broken espresso machines. That's the Victor I know. And if you can't see past your own hurt to recognize that people change, that's your loss. Silence. Clarissa's expression flickered. Surprise, then anger, then something like grudging respect. Well, she said finally, maybe he's not completely hopeless after all. She walked away, heels clicking sharply on marble. Victor stared at Nina, something unreadable in his eyes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She was wrong. Nina, dance with me, she said suddenly. The band had started playing something slow, couples drifting onto the floor. You brought me to a gala. I want at least one dance before we leave. Victor extended his hand. She took it and he led her onto the floor, one hand settling at her waist, the other clasping hers gently. They moved together, awkward at first, then finding rhythm. Thank you, he said quietly, close enough that only she could hear. For defending me. For being here. You'd do the same. I would. I will. They swayed in silence. Nina rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart through the tuxedo. Around them, the ballroom glittered, champagne, diamonds, wealth beyond measure. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Only this. Victor's hand warm at her waist, the silk dress brushing her knees, the way he held her like she was something precious instead of convenient. When the song ended, Victor didn't let go immediately. He looked down at her, eyes searching. Nina, a photographer's flash interrupted. Then another. The moment shattered. We should go, Nina said softly. Victor nodded, reluctant. They left the gala, slipping out a side entrance to avoid more cameras. In the car, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with things unsaid. Same time tonight? Victor asked as they pulled up to Nina's building. Midnight? She smiled. I'll leave the door unlocked. But as Nina climbed the stairs to her apartment, dress rustling, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. They'd crossed a line at the gala, not physically but emotionally. The arrangement, the contract, the careful boundaries they'd maintained, all of it felt thinner now, gossamer instead of steel, and Nina wasn't sure if that terrified or thrilled her. The photo from the gala went viral by morning. Not the staged PR shots, but a candid. Nina and Victor on the dance floor, her head on his shoulder, his eyes closed, both of them looking like nothing else existed. The caption, from a society blogger, Victor Hale's mystery woman isn't just a consultant, she's his salvation. New York romanced a power couple. Nina's phone exploded. Jenna called 6 times. Her mother left a voicemail in Portuguese demanding details. Even the landlord texted, saw you in the news. Rent still due the 1st. But the strangest message came from an unknown number at 9 a.m. unknown. Ms. Park, this is Margaret Chen, executive assistant to Victor Hale. Mr. Hale has requested I coordinate with you regarding upcoming public appearances. Please call at your earliest convenience. Nina stared at the message. Public appearances. Plural. She called Victor instead. Nina. His voice sounded tired. I was going to call you. Your assistant texted me. I know. I'm sorry. The board saw the photo. They think it's good PR, humanizes me. They want to capitalize on it. Charity events, fundraisers, a couple of interviews. Victor, I'm not... I told them no. He interrupted. I'm not parading you around for publicity. But then I thought, maybe it's not the worst idea. Not for PR, for us. Us? He was quiet for a moment. Nina, I need to be honest. This stopped being just midnight coffee weeks ago. You know that, right? Her heart hammered. You don't have to say anything. But I wanted you to know. Whatever this is, it's real to me. And if you want to walk away, if it's too much, I'll understand. But if you don't, if you want to see where this goes, then maybe we stop pretending it's just an arrangement. Nina sat down, legs suddenly weak. What are you saying? I'm saying date me, actually. No contract, no consultation agreement, just us. It should have been romantic. It should have been easy to say yes. But Nina's mind raced with complications. The scrutiny, the pressure, the fact that their worlds were galaxies apart. She made coffee. He brokered billion-dollar deals. She lived in a studio apartment with a rattling radiator. He owned a penthouse with a skyline view. Can I think about it? She asked quietly. Of course. Victor's voice softened. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Midnight still stands regardless. They hung up. Nina sat in her apartment, dress from the gala still hanging on the closet door, trying to untangle her feelings. She liked Victor, more than liked him if she was honest. But liking someone and building a life with them were different things, especially when one of you lived under constant public watch. She decided to ask Jenna for advice. They met for lunch at a diner near Nina's apartment. "He wants to date you," Jenna said flatly. "For real?" "Yeah." "And you said?" "I said I'd think about it." Jenna set down her fork. "Nina. Victor Hale, billionaire, gorgeous, apparently does dishes, wants to date you. What is there to think about?" "Everything. What if it doesn't work? What if I embarrass him at another event? What if it does work?" Jenna countered. "What if he's exactly who he seems to be? A good guy who's lonely and found someone who makes him feel human again? But his world is just a world. He's choosing to be in yours, remember? At midnight, washing dishes, wearing a cat apron. He's already meeting you halfway." Nina picked at her fries. "It's scary. Of course it is. But you've been scared before. You opened a cafe with no safety net. You took a loan you could barely afford. You bet on yourself. Why won't you bet on him?" The words hit Nina harder than expected. Jenna was right. She'd been brave when it came to business, to chasing dreams, to building something from nothing. But with Victor, she kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to realize she wasn't worth the hassle, for the fairy tale to dissolve back into reality. "Okay," Nina said finally. "Okay? I'll tell him yes tonight," Jenna grinned. About time. But when Nina returned to the cafe at 11 p.m. to prep for Victor's arrival, she found something waiting on the doorstep. A manila envelope, no return address, with her name written in block letters. She opened it. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Victor at restaurants with beautiful women. Victor at clubs laughing. Victor boarding a private jet with a brunette whose hand rested on his arm. Each photo was time-stamped, dates from the last 3 months, and underneath a note typed on plain paper. Ask him about Simone Laurent. Ask him why she still has a key to his penthouse. Ask him what happens at midnight when you're not around. Nina's hands shook. She looked at the photos again. The dates. Some overlapped with nights Victor had been at her cafe. But the timestamps showed different times. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10:30 p.m., before midnight. Before her, was he living a double life, seeing other women in the hours before showing up in her cafe, playing the role of vulnerable, lonely CEO? The door behind her opened. Victor stepped out of a car earlier than usual, still in his work suit. "You're early," Nina said, voice hollow. He frowned, reading her expression. "What's wrong?" She held up the envelope. "Who's Simone Laurent?" Victor's face went pale. "Where did you get that?" "Doesn't matter, is it true?" "Are you seeing her?" "No, Nina, let me explain. Do you have a key to her place?" "Does she have a key to yours?" "It's not—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and panic mixing. "Simone is my ex-fiancée. From before Clarissa. We broke up 5 years ago. She's been trying to reconnect, and yes, she kept a key I never bothered to get back, because I didn't think it mattered. But I haven't seen her. Not romantically. Not ever. These photos are from business events, charity functions, galas I attended because my company required it. Look at the timestamps. I left every single one of those events by 11:30 to come to you." Nina examined the photos again. He was right. Every timestamp before midnight. "Someone wants you to doubt me," Victor said quietly. "Someone wants to destroy this before it starts. Who? I don't know. But Nina, look at me." He stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. "I'm not playing you. I'm not using you. Every night for 2 months I've shown up because being with you is the only time I feel like myself. I'm asking you to trust me. Please." Nina wanted to believe him. But trust required a leap, and she'd spent her whole life learning that leaps could end in freefall. "I need time," she whispered. Victor's face fell. "Okay, I understand." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I was going to tell you about Simone tonight. She called yesterday asking to meet. I said no. I've said no 17 times. But I should have told you she existed. I should have been transparent. That's on me." He walked back to his car and drove away. Nina stood alone on the sidewalk, envelope in hand, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the smartest decision. Inside the cafe, the cat apron hung on its usual hook waiting for midnight. But for the first time in months, midnight came and went and no one wore it. Victor didn't come the next night, or the night after that. Nina told herself it was fine. Better even. She needed space to think, to process, to decide if trusting him was wisdom or foolishness. But the cafe felt emptier. The dishes piled up and Nina washed them herself, muscles aching, the silence suffocating. She kept glancing at the clock, 11:58, 11:59, midnight. No knock, no silhouette at the glass, just her and the buzz of fluorescent lights. On the fourth night, Jenna showed up unannounced. "You look terrible," Jenna said, sliding onto a stool. "Thanks." "Have you talked to him?" "No." "Nina, I don't know what to say. What if he's lying? What if those photos mean something?" Jenna pulled out her phone and started typing. Simone Laurent. "Let's see what the internet knows." She scrolled, then turned the screen toward Nina. Former model, CEO of a luxury skincare line, engaged to Victor Hale 2019-2020. Broke it off publicly, cited incompatibility. Since then, she's been linked to 3 other billionaires. Currently dating some tech guy in San Francisco. Nina read the articles. Simone Laurent was stunning. Tall, elegant, the kind of woman who belonged in penthouse elevators and private jets. The kind of woman Victor should date. "So she's not a threat," Jenna continued. "She's an ex who's moved on. Those photos are from events she attended for networking, not romance. And you're letting anonymous gossip destroy something real." "But what if you're scared?" Jenna interrupted. "What if the real problem isn't Victor? It's that you don't believe you deserve this?" The words landed like a punch. Nina opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Jenna was right. Nina had spent 3 years building Crescent, fighting for every customer, scraping by, convincing herself that struggle equaled worthiness. The idea that someone like Victor could genuinely want her, not as charity, not as a project, but as an equal, felt impossible. Surely there was a catch. Surely she'd missed something. "I'm an idiot," Nina whispered. "Yep, but a fixable one. Go talk to him." Nina closed early and took a cab to the address listed on Victor's business card. A building in Tribeca, sleek glass and steel. The doorman recognized her from the gala photo and waved her through without questions. She rode the elevator to the penthouse, heart hammering. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that was exactly what she'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows, skyline view, minimalist furniture that cost more than her yearly revenue. But something felt off. The space was cold, impersonal, like a hotel, not a home. Victor stood by the window, silhouette against the city lights. He turned when he heard her. "Nina." "Hi." They stared at each other. Nina noticed details she'd missed before, the dark circles under his eyes deeper now, the wrinkled shirt like he'd slept in it, the way he held himself, tense, guarded, like he'd been bracing for rejection. "I'm sorry," Nina said quietly. "For doubting you, for not giving you a chance to explain." Victor's shoulders dropped slightly. "You had every right. Anonymous photos showing up on your doorstep, that's scary. I would have doubted me too. But you weren't lying." "No." Nina stepped closer, scanning the penthouse. "You know what's weird? This place doesn't feel like you." Victor blinked. "What do you mean?" "At the cafe, you're comfortable. You joke about latte art, you wear a cat apron. You look happy. But here?" She gestured at the sterile perfection around them. "This looks like a museum. No photos, no clutter, no life." He looked away. "I bought it after the divorce. Needed something new. But you're right. It's never felt like home. Why not? Because home isn't a place." His voice was barely above a whisper. "It's a feeling, and I haven't felt it in years. Until—" He stopped. Nina waited. "Until midnight coffee," he finished. "Until you." Nina crossed the remaining distance between them. "Victor, I need to know something. Those nights you show up, is it really about coffee? Or am I just convenient?" "You're not convenient. You're essential." He turned to face her fully. "When I lost my mother 3 years ago, I stopped knowing how to be human. Work became everything. Deals, acquisitions, board meetings, I could control those. Relationships, emotions, vulnerability. I couldn't, so I avoided them. Clarissa left because I gave her a prenup instead of promises. She was right to leave." He pulled something from his pocket, a worn photograph, edges bent. "This was taken at my mother's cafe in Brooklyn. She ran it for 30 years. Died suddenly, aneurysm, no warning. I was in Singapore closing a deal when it happened. Never got to say goodbye." Nina took the photo. It showed a younger Victor, maybe 19, standing beside a woman with his smile. Behind them, a small cafe, checkerboard floor, mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu. Familiar. Your mother ran a cafe? Yeah, she taught me to make coffee when I was 12. To wash dishes. To respect the work. After she died, I couldn't go back there. Sold the building, buried the grief, became the person you see in Forbes articles. He met Nina's eyes. Then I walked past Crescent and saw you closing. Something about the light, the way you moved, it reminded me of her. Of a time when life was simpler. When I wasn't Victor Hale, CEO, just Victor, the kid who helped his mom after school. Nina felt tears stinging her eyes. That's why you came back. That's why I stayed. You gave me back something I'd lost. Not just routine, purpose, connection. The feeling that I could be ordinary and that would be enough. He took the photo back, fingers trembling slightly. So no, Nina, you're not convenient. You're the reason I remember how to be human. The silence stretched. Outside, the city glittered, oblivious. Nina made a decision. She reached up, cupping his face with both hands. Then stop hiding here. Come back to the cafe. To midnight. To me, are you sure? Yes. Victor leaned down and Nina rose on her toes and they kissed. Soft, tentative, like testing the weight of something fragile. His hands found her waist. Hers slid into his hair. The kiss deepened. 3 months of unspoken feelings pouring into contact. When they broke apart, both breathless, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right, he said quietly. No contracts. No arrangements. Just us figuring it out together. Okay, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy, he smiled. That rare, genuine smile she'd only seen at midnight. Then let's be messy together. They stood in that cold penthouse, wrapped in each other, the skyline glittering behind them. And for the first time in 3 years, Victor Hale felt like he'd come home. Dating Victor was, as promised, messy. Not in the dramatic sense. No more anonymous photos, no surprise exes showing up. But in the logistical chaos of merging two incompatible worlds. Victor lived in penthouses and board meetings. Nina lived in rent-controlled studios and 5 a.m. espresso machine maintenance. Finding time together beyond midnight required negotiation, compromise, and a willingness to blur boundaries both were used to keeping rigid. They fell into a new routine. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Victor arrived at Crescent at 11:45 p.m., helped Nina close, and stayed until 1 a.m. They'd sit at the counter, talking about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Lisbon before moving to New York at 16. His boarding school years that taught him control instead of comfort. Her dream of opening a second location someday. His fear that success had cost him the ability to connect. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nina joined Victor for dinner at his penthouse. She taught him to cook, simple things like pasta carbonara and roasted vegetables. He was terrible at it, burned garlic 3 times, but the laughter that filled his sterile kitchen made it worthwhile. Weekends. They explored the city. Victor insisted on showing Nina his New York. The opera, gallery openings, restaurants where reservations required knowing someone who knew someone. Nina showed him hers. Street vendors in Queens, jazz clubs in Harlem, the bodega that made the best empanadas in Manhattan. It was working. Slowly, imperfectly, but working. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, late October. Nina had just finished teaching Victor how to make crème brûlée. He'd somehow turned it into scrambled eggs with sugar when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my lawyer. I should take this. Nina nodded, cleaning up while Victor stepped onto the balcony. Through the glass, she watched his expression shift, surprise, then something darker. When he came back inside, he looked shaken. What's wrong? Victor set his phone down carefully. That was Marcus, my attorney. Simone filed a lawsuit against me. What? She claims I breached a verbal contract we made during our engagement. Says I promised her shares in Hale Industries if we married. Now she's demanding either the shares or $20 million in compensation. Nina's stomach dropped. That's insane. You broke up 5 years ago. Statute of limitations for contract disputes is 6 years in New York. She timed it perfectly. He paced, agitation radiating off him. It's bullshit. We never had that conversation. But her lawyers found emails where I mentioned future planning and investment opportunities. They're twisting it into a promise. Can they win? Depends on the judge. Even if they can't, the lawsuit will drag for months. Depositions, media coverage, every detail of our relationship examined publicly. He stopped pacing, meeting her eyes. Nina, this is going to get ugly. Simone's smart. She knows I hate public scrutiny. She's betting I'll settle to make it go away quietly. Will you? No. His voice was steel. I won't give her a penny. She doesn't get to weaponize a relationship that ended half a decade ago. But that means fighting. And fighting means you'll be dragged into it too. The press will connect you to me. They'll dig into your past, your business, everything. I won't do that to you unless you're okay with it. Nina processed this. She'd signed up for midnight coffee, for quiet dinners, for exploring the city together. She hadn't signed up to be collateral damage in a billionaire's legal war. But as she looked at Victor, jaw set, eyes blazing with determination, she realized something. He was giving her an out. He was offering her the chance to walk away before the storm hit. To protect herself, even if it meant losing him, that's when she knew. I'm not going anywhere, Nina said firmly. Nina, no, listen. I chose you. Not your money, not your reputation, you. The guy who burns garlic and wears a cat apron and washes my dishes without complaining. If Simone wants a fight, she gets one. But she doesn't get to scare me away. Victor crossed the space between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. He buried his face in her hair, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I don't deserve you, he whispered. You're right, so try harder. He laughed, broken, relieved, and kissed her. Not soft like before, but desperate. Grateful, like sealing a promise neither could take back. When they broke apart, Victor's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Simone's team leaked the lawsuit to page 6. Story drops in an hour. Prepare for media blitz, Victor showed Nina the text. Here we go. Then we go together. The story hit at 11 p.m. By 11:15, Nina's phone was ringing nonstop. Journalists, bloggers, even a producer from a morning talk show. She turned it off, grabbed her coat, and went to Crescent. Victor was already there, sitting on the stoop in jeans and a sweater, holding 2 takeout coffees. Figured you'd come here, he said. She sat beside him. Figured you would too. They sipped their coffee in silence, watching the street. A taxi passed. A couple argued on the corner. Life continued, oblivious to lawsuits and headlines. My lawyer wants me to release a statement, Victor said finally. Deny everything, discredit Simone, turn it into a PR war. What do you want to do? Tell the truth calmly, completely. Let the evidence speak for itself. He turned to her. But I wanted to ask you first. Because whatever I say affects you too now. Nina thought about it. Then tell the truth, all of it. Show the emails in context. Explain what actually happened. Don't hide, even if it makes things harder. Especially then. You taught me something, Victor. At midnight, washing dishes, being yourself, you showed me that hiding is exhausting. So stop, let people see who you really are. They'll either accept it or they won't. But at least you'll be free. Victor stared at her, awe and love mixing in his expression. How did I find you? You asked for one last coffee. Best decision I ever made. He pulled out his phone and drafted a statement. Nina read over his shoulder. Regarding the lawsuit filed by Ms. Laurent. The claims are false. I have never promised her shares in my company. Our engagement ended amicably in 2020, and I've had no romantic contact with her since. My legal team will provide full documentation proving these facts. I regret that Ms. Laurent has chosen this path, but I will not settle. The truth matters more than convenience. Victor Hale, send it, Nina said. He did. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Some supported him. Others called him arrogant. Simone's lawyers issued a counter-statement doubling down. The story dominated news feeds, comment sections, trending topics. But sitting on that stoop, coffee's growing cold. Nina and Victor felt something neither expected. Peace. They'd chosen honesty over strategy, transparency over protection, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. Come on, Nina said, standing. Let's go inside. I'll teach you to make a decent cappuccino. I thought I was hopeless. You are. But I've got time. They went into Crescent, locking the door behind them. Outside, the city buzzed with gossip and speculation. Inside, the espresso machine hissed and Victor put on his cat apron, and Nina showed him for the 100th time how to steam milk without creating a foam catastrophe. And when he finally managed a heart, lopsided but recognizable, she kissed him, tasting coffee and hope and the strange courage it takes to love someone publicly, messily, Honestly, you did it, she said. We did it, he corrected. The cat apron, slightly damp from splashed milk, hung between them like a flag of truce with the world. The lawsuit became a media circus within days. Simone's lawyers released evidence, emails, text messages, even a recorded phone call from 2019 where Victor allegedly discussed securing her future. Legal analysts dissected every word on cable news. Business journalists questioned Victor's judgment. Gossip blogs turned it into a soap opera. But the worst came from an unexpected source. Nina arrived at Crescent on a Wednesday morning to find a camera crew camped outside. Not paparazzi. A legitimate news van from Channel 7, complete with reporter and boom mic. Ms. Park. The reporter, a woman in her 30s with perfect hair and predatory eyes, shoved a microphone toward Nina's face. Is it true you're dating Victor Hale while his ex-fiancée is suing him for breach of contract? No comment. Do you stand to benefit financially if Mr. Hale wins the lawsuit? I said no comment. Sources say you signed a consultation agreement with Hale Industries. Can you confirm the terms? Nina pushed past them into the cafe, hands shaking. Inside, 3 customers sat frozen, phones out, filming. The sanctuary she'd built, the space that was supposed to be hers, separate from Victor's chaos, had been invaded. She asked the customers to leave. They complied, but reluctantly, already posting videos to TikTok with captions like "Billionaire's girlfriend loses it at cafe." Nina locked the door and called Victor. They're here, she said. At Crescent, filming, asking about the consultation agreement. I'll send security. No, that makes it worse. But Victor, they're twisting everything, making it sound like I'm with you for money. Nina, anyone with half a brain knows that's not true. But what if it affects the lawsuit? What if Simone's lawyers use me as evidence that you're reckless, that you make emotional decisions? Victor was quiet. Then, my lawyer did mention that. He thinks dating publicly while fighting this lawsuit looks impulsive. He's worried it gives Simone ammunition. Nina's chest tightened. So what do we do? Marcus suggested we cool things off. Publicly, stop being seen together until the lawsuit settles. Keep our relationship private. For how long? 6 months. Maybe more. 6 months. Half a year of pretending they weren't together. Of Victor sneaking into her cafe after midnight like they were doing something wrong. Of her avoiding his events, his world, the parts of his life that mattered. I can't do that, Nina whispered. I know. I told Marcus no. But if it helps the case, Nina, listen to me. I'm not hiding you. I'm not pretending you don't exist to make my lawyers comfortable. You matter more than strategy. But I'm making things harder for you. No, Simone made things harder. The lawsuit made things harder. You're the only thing making this bearable. Nina wanted to believe him. But guilt gnawed at her. If she truly cared about Victor, shouldn't she step back? Give him space to fight without the added complication of their relationship being scrutinized? Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Email from an unknown sender, subject line, the truth about Nina Park. Her stomach sank. She opened it. Inside was a dossier. Pages and pages of information. Her credit score, terrible. Her outstanding student loans, $32,000. The loan she'd taken for Crescent, co-signed by her mother. Currently 3 months behind on payments because revenue had been inconsistent. Even a parking ticket from 2023 she'd forgotten to pay. At the bottom, a message. Ask yourself, is a barista with this much debt really turning down a billionaire for love? Or is she the smartest gold digger in Manhattan? Forward this to Victor Hale or I will. Nina felt like she'd been punched. Everything in that email was true. She was in debt. She was struggling. And to anyone looking from the outside, dating a billionaire while drowning financially looked suspicious. She forwarded the email to Victor without comment. He called immediately.
Nina, this is harassment.
We'll track down who sent it. It's all true, though. So what? So I look exactly like what they're accusing me of. A gold digger. You're not, but I can't prove it, can I? I can't prove I didn't know who you were that first night. I can't prove I'm not with you for financial security. And now Simone's team has ammunition. CEO dates struggling business owner amid lawsuit. Questionable timing. Victor's voice hardened. I don't care what they think, but I do. Victor, I can't be the reason you lose this case. I can't be the weakness they exploit. You're not a weakness. You're my... He stopped, the word hanging unspoken between them. Nina's eyes burned with tears. I think Marcus is right. We need to cool things off publicly until this is over. No, Victor, I said no. I've spent my entire life making strategic decisions, sacrificing what matters for what's smart. I married Clarissa because our families aligned. I built my company by cutting people out when they became inconvenient. And I lost everything that mattered, my mother, my marriage, my humanity. I'm not doing it again. I'm not losing you because a lawyer thinks it's good strategy. But what if we lose the lawsuit? Then we lose. But we lose together honestly, without hiding. Nina, I'd rather stand in court holding your hand and face the consequences than win by pretending you don't exist. Nina couldn't speak. Tears spilled over, hot against her cheeks. I love you, Victor said quietly. I should have said it sooner. I love you, and I'm not pretending I don't to win a lawsuit filed by someone who never knew me the way you do. Nina's breath caught. Victor, you don't have to say it back. But I needed you to know. Whatever you decide, stay, go, hide, fight, I'll support it. But I won't ask you to disappear. Not for Simone. Not for anyone. Nina wiped her eyes, looking around Crescent, the cafe she'd built with sweat and stubbornness, the space where Victor had found her, asked for one last coffee and somehow made her believe that fairy tales could exist in the middle of ordinary life. She made her decision. I love you too, she said, and I'm staying. But we do this smart. We don't hide, but we don't flaunt it either. We live our lives, run our businesses, and let the truth speak for itself. Deal. And Victor, when this is over, when the lawsuit's done and the cameras go away, you're teaching me how to negotiate vendor contracts properly. I'm tired of being in debt, he laughed, relief flooding his voice. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. I'm practical. You knew that when you fell for me? I did. It's one of my favorite things about you. They hung up. Nina sat in her empty cafe, door still locked, processing everything. The dossier on her phone glowed like an accusation, but instead of shame, she felt something else. Determination. If someone wanted to paint her as a gold digger, fine. She'd prove them wrong the old-fashioned way, by succeeding on her own terms, by paying off her debts, by building Crescent into something sustainable, by showing the world that she didn't need Victor's money. She just wanted him. She unlocked the cafe door. The camera crew had left. Customers trickled back in, hesitant but curious. Nina served them with her usual efficiency, smiling through the exhaustion, pouring hearts into foam still lopsided, and pretending the world wasn't watching. But that night, when Victor arrived at midnight, they didn't just wash dishes and drink coffee. They sat down with Nina's financial records, a spreadsheet Victor built on his laptop, and a plan. We're going to fix this, Victor said, pointing to her loan balance. Not because I'm paying it off, because we're restructuring your business model to generate enough profit that you can. That'll take months. Then we have months. They worked until 2 a.m., Victor teaching her margin analysis and cash flow optimization, while Nina took notes like her life depended on it. Because maybe it did. Not just her cafe's life, but the life they were trying to build together. One where she stood beside him as an equal. Not a charity case. When they finally finished, Victor closed his laptop and pulled her close. We're going to win this, he said. The lawsuit. Your cafe, us. Nina rested her head on his shoulder. Promise? Promise. Outside, somewhere in Manhattan, Simone Laurent was plotting her next move. Anonymous emails were being drafted. Legal strategies refined. The storm was gathering strength. But inside Crescent Cafe, under fluorescent lights that buzzed softly, Nina Park and Victor Hale held each other and chose to believe that love, messy, public, inconvenient love, was worth fighting for, even if the fight destroyed them both. The breaking point came on a Thursday in early November. Nina was at Crescent mid-afternoon rush when her phone exploded with notifications. Not calls, alerts. Google alerts, Twitter mentions, Instagram tags, all pointing to the same thing, a press conference Simone Laurent was holding outside Manhattan Family Court. Nina pulled up the live stream. Simone stood on the courthouse steps, microphone in hand, flanked by 3 attorneys in matching navy suits. Behind them, a poster-sized printout, bank statements, emails, the consultation agreement between Nina and Hale Industries. I'm here today, Simone began, voice steady and sympathetic, nod to speak truth to power. For months, Victor Hale has painted me as a vindictive ex seeking undeserved compensation, but the evidence tells a different story. She gestured to the poster. These documents prove that Mr. Hale has a pattern of using financial agreements to control relationships. Just months after refusing to honor promises made during our engagement, he entered into a consultation agreement with Ms. Nina Park, a woman he met at a coffee shop and began dating shortly after. Nina's stomach dropped. They'd twisted the timeline, made it sound like Victor had hired her as a cover for romance. Simone continued. Ms. Park receives $10,000 monthly from Hale Industries. For what, marketing advice? Business consulting? Or is this simply how billionaires purchase companionship while maintaining plausible deniability? The reporters shouted questions. Simone held up a hand. I'm not judging Ms. Park. She's a struggling business owner who saw an opportunity. But this pattern, using money to control women to buy loyalty to ensure compliance, is exactly what happened to me. Victor Hale doesn't have relationships. He has transactions, and I refuse to let him win by framing me as the villain. The live stream ended. Comments flooded in. She's right. The timeline is suspicious. Poor Nina, she got played. $10K a month for consulting? Come on. Victor Hale is disgusting. Nina's hands shook. The cafe was full. 15 customers, all staring at their phones, all seeing the same thing. One woman near the window whispered to her companion, loud enough to carry, "Can you believe it?" She seemed so genuine. Nina wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that the consultation agreement was real, that she'd earned every dollar through actual work. But who would believe her? The evidence looked damning. $10,000 a month started just after they met, paid by the man she was now dating. From the outside, it looked exactly like what Simone described, a transaction dressed up as romance. Her phone rang. "Victor, don't believe a word," he started. "I know it's not true. But Victor, everyone else believes it. Look at the comments. Look at the headlines already forming. We'll issue a statement. Explain the timeline, show your actual consulting work. It won't matter." People see what they want to see. And they want to see a gold digger and the billionaire stupid enough to fall for her. "Nina, I have to go." She hung up before he could argue, tears threatening. The cafe felt suffocating. Every customer was a witness, a potential TikTok video, another piece of evidence that she'd been exposed. She closed early, flipping the sign with shaking hands. As she locked the door, she noticed something taped to the glass. A printout of Simone's press conference photo with 2 words scrawled in red marker, "Gold digger." Nina ripped it down, crumpled it, threw it in the trash. But walking home, she saw more. Posted on lampposts, tucked under windshield wipers, someone, maybe Simone's team, maybe just internet trolls with too much time, had plastered the neighborhood with them. By the time she reached her apartment, Nina's phone had 53 new messages. Jenna, her mother, journalists requesting comment. Even her landlord saw the news. Rent is still due. She turned off her phone and sat in the dark. The next morning, things got worse. Nina's Instagram, which she barely used, had been flooded overnight. Thousands of comments, most of them vicious. "You're pathetic. Using a grieving man for money, disgusting. Hope Victor dumps you. You don't deserve that cafe." But the worst came in her business email. 3 vendors canceled contracts, citing reputational concerns. Her coffee supplier, who she'd worked with for 3 years, sent a terse message. "Effective immediately, we're terminating our agreement. Payment in full required for outstanding orders." Nina stared at the screen. Without that supplier, she couldn't make coffee. Without coffee, she had no business. She called Victor in a panic. "They're canceling my contracts. I'm going to lose Crescent. I'll handle it. I'll call them, explain." "No, that makes it worse. It proves I need you to save me." "Nina, pride isn't worth losing your cafe." "It's not about pride. It's about the fact that if you fix this, Simone wins. She gets to say I'm with you because I need you. And maybe she's right. Don't say that. Why not? I am in debt. I do need help. And you gave it to me. How is that different from what she's claiming? Because you earned it. Because the work you did was real. Because I didn't pay you to date me. I hired you because you're good at what you do, and I fell for you because of who you are." Nina wanted to believe him, but sitting in her apartment watching her business collapse in real time, she couldn't separate reality from perception, and perception was destroying her. "I need space," she said quietly. "What?" "To think." To figure out if staying together is helping or hurting both of us. Nina, don't do this. Don't let them win. Maybe they already did. She hung up, turned off her phone, sat in silence while the world outside decided her guilt. 3 days passed. Nina didn't open Crescent, didn't answer calls, didn't check the news. She stayed in her apartment, surviving on crackers and tap water, trying to figure out how her life had collapsed so completely. On day 4, Jenna showed up, pounding on the door until Nina opened it. "You look like hell," Jenna said, pushing past her. "Thanks. Have you seen what Victor did?" "I don't want to know." "Too bad." Jenna pulled out her phone and played a video. Victor Hale, standing in front of Hale Industries headquarters, facing a crowd of reporters. "I'm here to address the allegations made by Ms. Laurent," Victor said, voice measured but firm. "She claims I use financial agreements to control women. She's wrong, but I understand why the optics look bad. So I'm releasing every document related to the consultation agreement with Ms. Nina Park." The screen cut to PDFs. Nina's proposals for Crescent's optimization, her cash flow analyses, Victor's feedback on her strategies, timestamps showing she'd worked 40+ hours across 3 months. Real work, legitimate consulting. Ms. Park earned every dollar, Victor continued. "I hired her because she's brilliant at small business operations. I fell in love with her because she challenges me, grounds me, and reminds me what matters. Those are separate truths that happen to overlap. If that makes me guilty of mixing business with pleasure, so be it. But I won't let her be crucified for my choices." The video ended. Nina stared at the screen, throat tight. "He released everything," Jenna said softly. "Your work. The consulting deliverables. Even the internal emails where his CFO praised your recommendations. He proved you're legit, Nina. You earned that money. But people will still think, some will, others won't, but he tried. He put his reputation on the line to defend yours." Nina felt something crack open in her chest. Not relief, not yet. But the possibility of it. The understanding that while the world might judge her, the one person whose opinion truly mattered had stood up and said, "She's worth it." "I need to see him," Nina whispered. "Yeah," Jenna agreed. "You really do." Nina went to Crescent that night at 11:45 p.m., the time when everything had started. The cafe was dark. She'd been closed for 4 days, lost revenue she couldn't afford to lose. But she unlocked the door and turned on the lights anyway. At midnight exactly, Victor appeared at the glass. She let him in. They stood in the empty cafe, neither speaking. Victor looked exhausted, tie askew, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept since their last conversation. "I'm sorry," Nina said finally. "For pulling away. For doubting us when you had every right. This is my mess, my lawsuit, my ex. You shouldn't have to, but I want to." Nina stepped closer. "I want to stand with you even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I'm just scared." "Of what?" "Of not being enough. Of you waking up one day and realizing you could have someone easier, someone who fits your world." Victor cupped her face with both hands. "Nina Park, you're the most exhausting, stubborn, brilliant person I've ever met. You don't fit my world because my world was broken. You made me build a better one. One where midnight coffee matters more than board meetings. Where washing dishes is an honor instead of a chore. Where love isn't a transaction, it's a choice we make every single day." Tears spilled down Nina's cheeks. "Even when the world calls me a gold digger?" "Especially then. Because I know the truth. You're the woman who turned down my money 3 times before accepting it. Who made me earn your trust. Who still splits dinner checks even though I'm worth billions. You're not with me for what I have. You're with me despite it." Nina laughed through her tears. "You're right. Your money is actually super inconvenient, see? Worst gold digger ever." They kissed, desperate and relieved, like coming up for air after drowning. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to get through this," he whispered. "Together, promise?" "Promise." But outside Crescent's windows the storm was still gathering. Simone's lawsuit was still active. The internet still buzzed with speculation. And somewhere someone was preparing the final blow. The war wasn't over. But at least now, they were fighting it side by side. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victor's assistant, Margaret Chen. Margaret had worked for Victor for 12 years, quiet, efficient. the kind of person who anticipated needs before they were spoken. She'd watched the lawsuit unfold with professional detachment until the day Simone's team released those forged emails. That's when Margaret remembered something. She called Victor at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, voice tight with urgency. "I need you to come to the office now and bring your lawyer." Victor, still at his penthouse with Nina asleep in the next room, felt his pulse spike. "What's wrong?" "I found something. About Simone. About the lawsuit. You need to see this." An hour later, Victor sat in his office conference room with Marcus, his attorney, and Margaret. Spread across the table were documents Margaret had pulled from archived files. Emails, calendar invites, expense reports, all from 2019-2020. "I didn't realize it until Simone claimed you promised her company shares," Margaret said, pointing to a printed email chain. "But look at this. September 2019, you were in Tokyo for the Nakamura acquisition. Simone sent you 12 emails in 3 days asking about investment opportunities. You replied to exactly one, saying you'd discuss future planning when you returned." Victor scanned the email. "Right. I meant planning the engagement party, not giving her shares." "Exactly. But here's what matters." Margaret pulled out another document, a calendar screenshot. "That same week, Simone met with someone else. Alexander Chen, a venture capitalist friend of yours." Victor frowned. "Alexander? Why would she meet with him?" "Because she was pitching him on a business idea, a luxury skincare line, and according to his expense report, which I pulled because you expense all meetings with investors, he told her the idea had potential, but she needed capital. He suggested she ask you for it." Marcus leaned forward. "Do we have proof of this meeting?" Margaret pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. Alexander Chen's voice filled the room. "Victor, it's Alex. Listen, your fiancé met with me last Tuesday. Pitched a skincare concept, honestly not bad. I told her she'd need about $5 million in seed funding. She asked if you'd invest, and I said probably not. You don't do consumer goods. But she seemed convinced you'd promised her something. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Call me." The voicemail was dated October 3rd, 2019, 2 weeks before Victor's future planning email. Marcus's eyes widened. "This proves premeditation. She was trying to secure funding before you even sent that email. She wasn't responding to a promise, she was manufacturing one. But that's not all," Margaret said. She pulled out a bank statement. 3 months after your engagement ended, June 2020, Simone launched her skincare company, Maison Laurent. Initial investment $5 million. From an LLC registered in Delaware. "Whose LLC?" Victor asked. "I don't know yet. But the timing is suspicious. She breaks up with you in March 2020. Launches a company in June with exactly the amount she claimed you owed her. Someone funded her, and now she's suing you for money she's already received." Marcus grabbed his phone. "I'm calling our investigators. We need to trace that LLC, find the real investor, and prove she committed fraud." While Marcus made calls, Victor sat back, processing. Simone hadn't sued him because she believed he owed her. She'd sued because her company was failing. Nina had shown him articles about Maison Laurent's struggles, stores closing, inventory unsold, and she needed a scapegoat. "Someone to blame. Someone to fund her second chance, Margaret," Victor said quietly. "Why didn't you bring this forward sooner?" She met his eyes. "Because until now I didn't think you'd fight. For 12 years I've watched you settle disputes, pay people off, avoid conflict because it was easier. But Nina changed something. You're fighting for her, for what's right. So I'm fighting with you." Victor felt his throat tighten. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still need to prove who funded Simone. Without that, she can claim the LLC was a separate investor, that the lawsuit is legitimate." The answer came 48 hours later. Victor's investigative team traced the Delaware LLC to a shell corporation, then to a private equity firm, then finally to a name, Richard Laurent, Simone's father. Marcus assembled the evidence like a prosecutor building a murder case. Evidence 1, physical. Bank statements showing Richard Laurent transferred $5 million to Simone's LLC in June 2020. Tax documents confirming Maison Laurent's sole investor was her father. Evidence 2, witness. Alexander Chen's voicemail and expense report proving Simone had sought funding before Victor's supposed promise. Alexander agreed to testify. Evidence 3, authority. A forensic accountant's report analyzing the emails Simone's team had submitted as evidence. Conclusion. Metadata showed 2 emails had been edited post-dating, timestamps altered to make them appear sent during Victor's engagement, when they'd actually been composed months later as part of the lawsuit strategy. This is fraud, Marcus said, spreading the documents across Victor's desk. Simone knew she had no case. She manufactured one using edited emails and false timelines. We can not only defeat the lawsuit, we can countersue for damages. Victor stared at the evidence. Part of him felt vindicated, but another part, the part that remembered proposing to Simone in good faith, who'd believed their engagement meant something, just felt sad. What happens now? He asked. We file this with the court. Request an emergency hearing. Present the evidence publicly. Simone's lawsuit gets dismissed, likely with sanctions for filing a fraudulent claim. And Simone could face criminal charges if the DA decides to pursue. Fraud, perjury, evidence tampering, she crossed serious lines. Victor nodded slowly. Do it, file everything. But Marcus, I don't want criminal charges. I want her to drop the lawsuit, admit the truth, and walk away. That's enough, Victor. She tried to destroy you, and she failed. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in closure. Marcus sighed, but agreed. They'd present the evidence, force Simone to drop the suit, but stop short of ruining her completely. Not because Victor was soft, but because he'd learned something from Nina. Winning meant building something better, not tearing down your enemies. That night, Victor showed Nina everything. They sat at Crescent's counter, documents spread between coffee cups as Nina read through the evidence. She faked the emails, Nina said, disbelief in her voice. She actually edited them. Yeah, why? If her father funded her company, why come after you? Pride, failure, maybe both. Maison Laurent is hemorrhaging money. She needed someone to blame. I was convenient. Nina set down the papers. I'm sorry. For what? That someone you loved enough to propose to could do this. Victor took her hand. I didn't love Simone. Not really. I thought I did, but it was performance. A relationship that looked right on paper. I loved the idea of her more than the person. And now? Now I know the difference. Because I love you, Nina. Not the idea of you. Not the version that's convenient or flattering. You, the real, messy, stubborn, brilliant you. Nina smiled, eyes shining. Even when I panic and shut you out? Especially then. Because you come back. You fight through the fear. That's love. The real kind. They kissed across the counter, coffee-scented and gentle, while outside the city hummed with its usual indifference. What happens next? Nina asked. We go to court. We present the evidence. We win. And then? Victor smiled. Then we figure out what forever looks like. Nina laughed. One step at a time, billionaire. Fair enough. But as they sat together, evidence of Simone's betrayal still scattered around them. Both felt something shift. The storm that had threatened to destroy them had instead revealed the truth. They were stronger together than apart. And whatever came next, court battles, public scrutiny, the messy process of building a life, they'd face it with eyes open and hands clasped. The war was almost over. But the real work, the work of love, was just beginning. The emergency hearing was scheduled for December 3rd at Manhattan Family Court. Victor's legal team requested public proceedings. They wanted the evidence presented openly, transparently, so there could be no question about the truth. Simone's team tried to block it, filing motions for private arbitration, sealed documents, anything to keep the fraud quiet. But Judge Patricia Morrison denied every motion. If Simone wanted to wage a public battle, she'd face public consequences. Nina stood outside the courthouse at 8 a.m., flanked by Victor and Marcus. Camera crews lined the steps. Reporters shouted questions. The crowd was thick. Journalists, legal analysts, curious onlookers who'd followed the drama online and wanted to witness the finale. You don't have to be here, Victor said quietly. You can wait inside, avoid the cameras. Nina shook her head. I'm staying. Right beside you. They walked up the steps together, Victor's hand at her back, cameras flashing like lightning. Someone in the crowd shouted, Is it true she's a gold digger? Nina kept her eyes forward, chin up, refusing to flinch. Inside the courtroom, they took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Simone sat with her 3 attorneys, looking composed in a cream-colored suit. She didn't glance at Victor once. Judge Morrison entered, A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every courtroom trick twice. She banged the gavel. This is an emergency hearing regarding the lawsuit filed by Simone Laurent against Victor Hale. Mr. Brennan, you requested this hearing. Present your case. Marcus stood, carrying a folder thick with evidence. Your Honor, we're here to request immediate dismissal of Ms. Laurent's lawsuit on grounds of fraud, evidence tampering, and perjury. The evidence will show that Ms. Laurent knowingly filed false claims based on fabricated documents. Simone's lead attorney, a man named Crawford, objected immediately. Your Honor, this is a baseless accusation. Save it, Mr. Crawford. I'll hear the evidence. Proceed, Mr. Brennan. Marcus began systematically, each piece of evidence projected onto screens for the courtroom to see. First, Alexander Chen's voicemail and expense report. This proves Ms. Laurent sought business funding in September 2019. Before the email, she claims constituted a promise from Mr. Hale. She was already planning her company when she fabricated the context of their conversation. Second, the bank statements. On June 15, 2020, Richard Laurent, Ms. Laurent's father, transferred $5 million to Maison Laurent LLC. This is the exact amount Ms. Laurent claims Mr. Hale owed her. She received the funding elsewhere, yet still filed suit against Mr. Hale. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Simone's face remained impassive, but her attorney leaned over to whisper urgently. Third, the forensic analysis. 2 emails submitted as evidence by Ms. Laurent's team show clear signs of metadata manipulation. They were composed in July 2024 this year and backdated to appear from 2019. This is evidence tampering. Your Honor, deliberate fraud. The forensic accountant took the stand, walking through the technical analysis. Timestamps altered. IP addresses inconsistent with Victor's devices. Formatting anomalies that proved the emails were created recently, not 5 years ago. Crawford tried to object, to question the methodology, but the evidence was ironclad. Even Judge Morrison, usually neutral, looked increasingly stern. Mr. Crawford, the judge said after the accountant stepped down, do you have any rebuttal to these findings? Crawford stood, hesitating. Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to review. No, you had months to prepare your case. Present your defense or concede. Simone leaned forward suddenly, whispering harshly to Crawford. He shook his head. She whispered again, more insistent. Finally, Crawford sighed and stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to address the court directly. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. Ms. Laurent, you understand you're under oath. Simone stood, smoothing her suit. Yes, Your Honor. Proceed. Simone turned to face the courtroom, her gaze finally landing on Victor. I'd like to withdraw my lawsuit. Silence. She paused, swallowing hard. I was angry when Victor and I ended our engagement. I blamed him for not supporting my dreams, for prioritizing his company over our relationship. When my business began failing, I convinced myself he owed me, that he'd stolen the opportunity I deserved. Victor sat perfectly still, expression unreadable. But the truth is, Simone continued, voice cracking slightly, my father funded my company. Victor never promised me shares. I knew that. But I was desperate, failing, and I thought... She stopped, tears forming. I thought if I could make him the villain, my failure wouldn't be my fault. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Laurent, are you confessing to filing a fraudulent lawsuit? Yes, Your Honor, the courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras, allowed only in the public gallery, flashed. Crawford tried to intervene, but Simone held up a hand. I fabricated evidence. I manipulated emails. I lied because I couldn't face the truth. I wasn't good enough. Not at business. Not at being a partner to Victor. And instead of accepting that and moving forward, I tried to destroy him. She turned to Victor directly. I'm sorry. For this, for all of it. You deserved better from me. Victor's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded once. Not acceptance, acknowledgement. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Case dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Laurent, you'll face sanctions for evidence tampering and filing a fraudulent claim. Mr. Brennan, prepare a damages assessment for court costs. We're adjourned. The gavel struck again. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the scene was chaos. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions at both sides. Simone's attorneys rushed her into a waiting car, shielding her from cameras. Victor and Nina stood on the steps, Marcus fielding press inquiries. Mr. Hale, how do you feel about the dismissal? Will you pursue criminal charges against Ms. Laurent? Nina, what's your response to those who called you a gold digger? Victor stepped up to the microphone cluster, pulling Nina gently beside him. I have a brief statement. No questions after. The crowd quieted. Today, the truth came out. Simone Laurent filed false claims based on fabricated evidence. The court agreed. The lawsuit is dismissed. I'm grateful to my legal team, to the justice system, and most importantly, he turned to Nina, to the woman who stood beside me when the world called her a fraud. She's not. She never was. And anyone who doubted her can watch her prove them wrong. He stepped back, but Nina surprised him by leaning forward to the microphone. I'd like to add something, she said, voice steady despite the cameras. For weeks, people called me a gold digger, said I was with Victor for his money, that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. She paused, meeting the lenses head-on. To those people I say, watch me. My cafe is still standing. My business is still growing. And I'm still here not because of Victor's wealth, but because we chose each other. That's what love is, a choice, not a transaction. The crowd erupted in questions, but Victor pulled Nina away down the steps into a waiting car. Once inside, door closed, they exhaled simultaneously. You were amazing, Victor said. I was terrified. Couldn't tell. Nina laughed, giddy with relief. It's over. It's actually over. Yeah. Victor pulled her close, kissing her temple. It's over. But even as he said it, both knew the real work was just beginning. The lawsuit was dismissed, but trust had been fractured, in themselves, in each other, in the world's willingness to see them clearly. Rebuilding would take time. Still, sitting in that car, Manhattan streaming past the windows, Nina felt something she hadn't in months. Peace. Not because the battle was won, but because they'd won it together. And that, she realized, was what forever looked like. Not the absence of storms, the willingness to weather them hand in hand until the sky cleared. 6 months later, Crescent Cafe was unrecognizable. Not physically. The same narrow storefront, the same mismatched chairs, the same chalkboard menu. But energetically. The space hummed with life, with laughter, with the hiss of the espresso machine working overtime. Nina stood behind the counter, training her first employee, a college student named Marcus, no relation to the lawyer, who was terrible at latte art but excellent with customers. She'd hired him 2 months ago, once revenue stabilized, and she'd paid off the last of her supplier debts. The consultation agreement with Hale Industries had ended in March, as planned, but by then, Nina's business model had transformed. Victor's strategies, margin optimization, inventory restructuring, targeted marketing, had increased monthly profit by 38%. Crescent wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Boss, Marcus called. Someone wants to talk to you. Nina looked up. A woman in her 40s stood at the counter, nervous but determined. Are you Nina Park? Yes, can I help you? The woman pulled out a business card. Sarah Chen, Small Business Development Center. I saw your interview, the one outside the courthouse, where you talked about building something real, not waiting for permission. It inspired me. I've been wanting to start a bakery for years but kept talking myself out of it. Your story made me think, maybe I could. Nina felt her throat tighten. The interview, which had gone viral after the trial, had generated unexpected responses. Dozens of messages from women who saw themselves in Nina's struggle, who'd been called gold diggers or opportunists for daring to want more, who needed proof that building something from nothing was possible. You absolutely could, Nina said. Actually, she pulled out her own business card. I'm doing informal consulting now. Nothing fancy, just coffee and conversation about business basics. First session's free. Sarah's eyes lit up. Really? Really? Come back Thursday night, 7 p.m. We'll talk revenue models and vendor contracts over cappuccinos. Sarah left beaming. Marcus grinned at Nina. You're like a business fairy godmother now. Don't push it. But she was smiling. Because this, helping others build what she'd built, sharing the hard-won knowledge Victor had given her, felt like purpose. Like the struggle had meant something beyond survival. That night at 11:45 p.m., after Marcus left and Crescent closed, Nina began her usual routine. Wiping tables, washing the last cups, prepping for tomorrow. She no longer needed to stay open past closing. The cafe's success meant she could hire help, delegate, rest. But midnight coffee had become tradition. And some traditions were worth keeping. At 12:00 a.m. exactly, Victor knocked on the glass. Nina let him in and he kissed her, soft, familiar, tasting like the peppermints he always kept in his car. He wore jeans and a sweater, the cat apron folded under his arm. "How was your day?" she asked, starting the espresso machine. "Long. Board meeting. Acquisition negotiations. The usual corporate theater." He put on the apron, moving to the sink. "How was yours?" "Good. We hit our revenue target for the month. And I signed my first official consulting client." Victor paused mid-scrub, turning to her with pride in his eyes. "Nina, that's amazing. It's small." "Just helping someone start a bakery. It's not small. It's everything." They worked in comfortable silence, Victor washing, Nina drying, the rhythm as natural as breathing. When the dishes were done, they sat at the counter with cappuccinos. Victor's foam art had improved. Tonight's heart only looked slightly like a deflated balloon. "I have something for you," Victor said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Nina's heart skipped. "Victor, relax, it's not a ring." He opened the box. Inside was a key. "It's a key to my place, the penthouse. I want you to have it. Not because you need it, but because I want you there, want you to feel like it's yours too." Nina took the key, feeling its weight. 6 months ago she would have refused. Would have seen it as dependence, as losing herself in his world. But now she understood. Accepting didn't mean surrendering. It meant building something together. "Okay," she said, "but only if you take this." She pulled a key from her apron, the spare to Crescent. "Not for emergencies. For midnight. For whenever you need this place to feel like home." Victor took it, closing his fingers around the metal. "Deal." They clinked coffee cups, sealing the trade. "I've been thinking," Nina said after a moment. "About what comes next, yeah? I want to expand. Not into a chain. I don't want to lose what makes Crescent special. But maybe a second location. Something small. A place where other people can feel what I felt when I started. That building something matters." Victor nodded slowly. "I know a property developer. Could help you scout locations. I'd like that. But Victor, you're paying market rate." "Dough favors, I know," Nina laughed. "You're learning. I have a good teacher." They finished their coffee, washed the cups, and locked up together. Outside, December had turned Manhattan cold and bright. Christmas lights strung between lampposts. The city dressed in its winter best. As they walked to Victor's car, hand in hand, Nina felt the completeness of the moment. Not perfection. Her feet hurt, her bank account was still modest, the cafe required constant vigilance. But completeness. The sense that she was exactly where she belonged. Victor stopped suddenly, pulling her around to face him. "I love you. I know. I want to marry you." Nina blinked. "Is this a proposal?" "No, not yet. But it's a warning. Because I'm going to propose, Nina. Probably soon. And when I do, I want you to be ready. To know that I'm serious. That this isn't about grand gestures or expensive rings. It's about midnight coffee and cat aprons and building a life where we both get to be ourselves." Nina felt tears pricking her eyes. "That's the worst proposal warning I've ever heard." "I know. But I needed to say it. Victor Hale, when you actually propose, you better do it right. Define right. Surprise me." He grinned. Challenge accepted. They drove back to the penthouse, which Nina had slowly transformed from sterile hotel into actual home, adding plants and clutter and photos of them at Crescent, washing dishes, being ordinary, and fell asleep tangled together, the city lights casting shadows across the ceiling. 3 months later, March brought unseasonable warmth, the kind of early spring that made New Yorkers shed their coats and crowd outdoor seating. Nina arrived at Crescent at 5 a.m. to prep, finding a line already forming, 10 people deep, some regulars, some tourists who'd seen the cafe on Instagram. Marcus was scheduled for the morning shift, but when Nina unlocked the door, she found Victor sitting at the counter instead. "What are you doing here?" she asked, confused. "It's 5 a.m. I know." He stood, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. "I need to tell you something." "Okay. I've spent the last year learning what matters, what makes life worth living. And every answer comes back to the same thing. You." Nina's heart started racing. "Victor, let me finish." He moved around the counter, standing directly in front of her. You taught me that home isn't a penthouse. It's midnight coffee. That success isn't measured in acquisitions but in the quiet satisfaction of building something real. That love doesn't require grand gestures. It requires showing up every day, choosing each other, even when it's hard. He reached behind the espresso machine and pulled out a cappuccino he'd apparently made before she arrived. The foam art was perfect, a flawless heart better than anything Nina had ever seen. How did you? I've been practicing. For months, because I wanted to do this right. He set the cup on the counter. Written in the foam, carefully etched with a toothpick, "Marry me?" Nina stared at the cup, then at Victor, who dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple gold band with a modest diamond, elegant but not ostentatious. "Nina Park," Victor said quietly. "You saved my life the night you let me in for one last coffee. I want to spend the rest of my life returning the favor. Will you marry me?" Nina couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, then managed to choke out, "Yes, yes. You ridiculous man, yes." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, perfect fit, because of course he'd somehow figured out her size, and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like coffee and happiness and the promise of ordinary forevers. The line of customers outside started clapping. Marcus appeared from the back room, grinning. Apparently the entire morning had been choreographed without Nina's knowledge. "Did you know about this?" Nina asked Marcus, laughing through tears. "Boss, everyone knew. We've been helping him practice that latte art for weeks." Victor shrugged, unapologetic. "I told you. When I proposed, I'd do it right." "This is perfect," Nina whispered. "This is everything." "Good, because I'm not done," he gestured to the window. Outside, the line of customers held a banner. "Congratulations, Nina and Victor." Nina laughed, overwhelmed, while Victor pulled her close. They stood together behind the counter of Crescent Cafe, the place where everything started, and Nina thought about the journey that had brought them here. The midnight coffees, the cat apron, the lawsuit, the doubt, the cameras, the fear, all of it worth it. Because it led to this: a simple ring, a perfect cappuccino, and the knowledge that sometimes fairy tales don't happen in ballrooms or penthouses. Sometimes they happen in tiny cafes at midnight, between two people who chose to show up for each other when the world made it hard. "What would you have done?" Nina asked the crowd outside, echoing the question she'd answered in that courthouse 6 months ago. The banner holders grinned and shouted back, "Said yes." Nina turned to Victor, rising on her toes to kiss him again. "Let's get married. When? Whenever, wherever. I don't care, as long as there's coffee. Deal." And as the sun rose over Manhattan, casting golden light through Crescent's windows, Nina Park and Victor Hale started brewing coffee for their customers, engaged, exhausted, and exactly where they belonged, home. 1 year later, Nina and Victor married in a quiet ceremony at Brooklyn's Prospect Park, the same park where Victor's mother used to take him after closing her cafe. 30 guests, no media, just family, friends, and Marcus making a terrible best man speech about latte art and dirty dishes. Crescent Cafe opened its second location in Queens 6 months after the wedding. Nina ran both with help from Marcus and a team of part-time baristas she trained personally. Victor stepped back from day-to-day operations at Hale Industries, appointing a new CEO while he focused on mentoring small businesses through a foundation he'd started in his mother's name. They kept their midnight ritual. Every Friday, no matter what else was happening, they closed Crescent together at 11 p.m. and sat at the counter with coffee, talking about the week, the future, the small victories and frustrations that made up a life. No more lawsuits, no more cameras. Just two people who'd found each other at midnight and decided that was enough. Sometimes love doesn't look like fairy tales. Sometimes it looks like dirty dishes, failed foam art, and the quiet courage to show up day after day, choosing the same person when the world says you should choose easier. But those are the kinds of love stories that last. The ones built on midnights instead of spotlights, on coffee instead of champagne, on the stubborn belief that ordinary can be extraordinary if you find the right person to share it with. What would you have done in Nina's place? Would you have trusted love when the world called you a fraud? Drop your answer in the comments below, And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about courage, love, and the messy, beautiful process of building a life worth living.